Hey guys, good Monday morning. Welcome back to the Huddle. We've got a lot of news to digest regarding Iran. The president issuing this demand to allies over this weekend to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. This obviously coming as oil prices continue to sort of spiral. The question is, will our allies help? And what does this mean for the incursion, as he calls it, in general? Can we still pull out within 4 weeks? Does this mean we're going to see a few more months of war in Iran? We'll talk about that. Plus, we'll talk about primary day in Illinois. Democratic factions once again sort of battling it out for influence. AIPAC getting involved again, and perhaps not to their benefit. You're going to want to hear Dan's take on all of that. We'll also talk about what's going on in Texas with the runoff, the race between Cornyn and Paxton, and is the president going to get involved? TBD. We will certainly discuss that. And we'll talk about the Trump administration making it easier for farm workers to hire cheap labor amid labor shortages. How is that going to set with the base, the Republican base in particular? Probably not well. So you want to hear what Sean has to say about that. First, guys, weekend. Everyone have a great weekend. What are your plans, I guess, for tomorrow, for St. Patrick's Day? Maybe that's where we start.
Well, first off, the weekend, I'm glad that I got home smoothly. LAX, I can proudly report, had almost no lines. So we got in, we got out, we got home, which was great. It is great to be home and on East Coast time again. And then New York City does a huge St. Patrick's Day parade. Our kids have already gotten the alerts about trying to get to school tomorrow, leave early, they were told. We'll see if that happens. St. Patrick's Day in New York City is a fun day. So
I'm sure.
Bipartisan day. There are a lot of drunk people walking around. I will not be partaking in that, but it's always good people watching.
Dan, you should partake. I mean, we know Sean is going to, right, Sean?
Maybe on air, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna. Well, this is the worst. It's the hardest time to be Irish and not drink. So.
Oh, that's right. You're in the middle of it's Lent still, so you have. Oh man,
oh, it's double Lent for me. I haven't had a drink since January 2nd. It's double Lent.
Double Lent, man. That's okay. So how do you celebrate then, Sean? If you can't have a,
it's not all about. It's about the people, Rachel. That's.
There you go.
Is
it all?
Patrick went to evangelize Ireland. It's all about the people and bringing people. So, we'll go to church or something, or I don't know. But this has been a big. I started the weekend. I was supposed to show up this morning and have great pictures of you with you guys. I was supposed to go under the Arctic. I was on a flight to Alaska Saturday morning, and we had a small issue. Turned back mid-flight, which was a bummer because you can only go every couple of years to do this thing. And I was going to do a great little episode on it. But the upside was I was home last night to go to the Irish ambassador's house with the Taoiseach and kick off St. Patrick's Day week, which is it's literally a week here in Washington, D.C. Tonight's the Ireland Fund dinner. Tomorrow is the White House and the big lunch with Sinn Féin and the Northern Ireland folks and the Irish Taoiseach, and it's going to be a big week for Ireland. But I got to tell you, the other thing, if you live in the DC area, we are under the first massive weather episode of this nature in a decade. They are literally closing schools. Congress canceled votes. This has the potential. There's tornado warnings in effect. This is a big deal for the entire they call it the DMV, District, Maryland, Virginia. So
I got to say, I'm a little nervous about it. You guys know about my power problem. I mean, like the wind blows just a little bit and I lose power. So let's hope that I'm here tomorrow with y'all. Maybe if not, I might be in a parking lot somewhere, like connected to like a library internet doing the show.
I think you should be in an Irish bar.
That's a good idea. I'll start drinking early too for the show.
And the bar. Come on.
There you go. I love that. So yeah, fingers crossed. Power remains and hopefully everybody stays safe because they are really, at Sean's right, they are absolutely like screaming at the top of their lungs that it's going to be a concern. Like my daughter's not going to school today. Like it's a whole thing. By the way, Sean, over the weekend you had a purchase, right? Which is a nice.
Oh yeah, I mean, look.
It's those funny. Photos. Do we have those photos?
I don't know if you guys get asked this, but every time we use products or do this, I do this on my show too. People will say like, "Oh, do you actually wear that? Do you do this?" And so I joke all the time. We talk about what, and Dan kept saying to me, "You got to get the other pajamas. So I went out, I got the pajamas, and then there's 2 types of lighter pajamas. There's the bamboo stretch, and then there's the lighter weight. And I was like, I don't know which one to get. So what do you do when you can't make a decision? You get both. You got a great code, Huddle 20. So I was like, well, if I'm getting 20% off because of the Huddle, but like people ask this all the time. Literally, that is my order. It is confirmed. I want you to see that, like, we don't just talk about wearing Cozy Earth. We order Cozy Earth. There's my order. And like I said, when you can't decide between 2 great Cozy Earth items, what do you do when you grab a fork in the road? You pick it up, you get both, and you eat it all. So I got both. And I'll tell you, once they get here, I assume later this week, which one. But I'm excited as the warmer weather. I say 70 today here in Virginia. It's going to be 40 tomorrow, 60 the next day, 38 the next day. So anyway, do like I did. Go to CozyEarth.com. Use code HUDDLE for 20% off.
Yeah, the weather is just all over the place. So you have to have everything. And that's like my philosophy too. When I go shopping, if I can't decide, I just buy everything. Just my husband doesn't always love that, but you know, it is what it is. Okay, let's jump into the day book. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's going to be in Beijing. This comes as the president has singled out China to say they better help with the Strait. We'll talk about that here later in the show. At 11 o'clock, the president's going to be participating in a policy meeting. At 11:45, he has a lunch with members of the Kennedy Center board.
Trump Kennedy Center board.
The Trump Kennedy Center board. Okay. Note putting that in here. Trump Kennedy Center board. This comes after there was some changes over at the Trump Kennedy Center. What do we know much about that, by the way, Sean? I mean, I haven't read a ton about Rick Grinnell.
The changes that you're referring to are Rick Grinnell is down. Right. The chief operating officer, I guess his name is now taking over CEO. I have not read it. There's a story in the Atlantic. Take that with a grain of salt for what I mean. That immediately about that. I have not taken the deep dive on reading. It says why. I don't know that I would believe it, but I just want to know what their angle is. So I don't know if Rick wanted out or if they wanted, but anyway, there will be new leadership and the end of July, I think it's like the 16th or something is when the Kennedy Center goes dark for that 2-year renovation.
Yeah, the reports are that Trump likes this other guy who he's been talking to about marble selections and all sorts of stuff. And he's the person being promoted is knee deep in the renovation, and Grinnell not so much.
Can I make one quick funny comment that came out over this? There's this story. There's ex officio members of the board. Those are like, so the first ladies and all these people get appointed just by the nature. The archivist, I think, of the capitalism. I mean, anyway, it doesn't matter. So there's a member of Congress that's an ex officio member of the board and sued to be able to attend the meeting. And they were claimed that they had not been invited to the meeting. And in the course of discovery, the lawyer for the Democrat member of Congress had to admit that the invitation was in their spam folder. And I just
this is Joyce Beatty, right?
Yeah. I love the fact that she went to court to sue about getting into the meeting and had to admit in proceedings with the judge that, well, yes, technically I had been invited, but it went to my spam folder, as if that's the Kennedy Center's fault.
Well,
Small details, Sean. Small details.
You're leaving out several details in that, but that part was a good one.
And by the way, speaking of renovation, because we're talking about, the Trump Kennedy Center, there was an interesting story over the weekend. I meant to flag this for you on a text chain. Something about replacing the famous columns at the White House. Did you guys see that?
Yeah, sure, of course. Trump wants these different ones. Yeah.
That iconic photograph. Maybe they look a little, maybe they're columns, but they look a little different. I don't know.
Well, it's the very top. It's the ornate detail on the very top of the columns that he wants to, look.
Can I make one quick point that I think is fascinating? Shameless plug for my book, Trump 2.0. But part of the reason that one of the things that when I wrote the book, I talked about the policy differences from Trump 1 to 2. But one of the big things that I bring up is that when you have 4 years out, think about the stamp that Trump is putting on the government, like the facades, right? The things that actually Kennedy got such credit for the color of Air Force One. It's called the Kennedy blue, right? And now Trump's changing that to red, white, and blue. The facade, the Kennedy Center, the diplomatic reception room, the Palm Room, the Rose Garden, all of these things. Trump has put a permanent stamp on it. And I get excited. Like, part of the reason I wrote this book is because I was like, if you don't stop and think real quick, like how permanent what he has done is going to affect, generations to come. It's mind blowing.
You think it's permanent?
I was going to say permanent.
You're not going to. Do you think
Democrats
someone's going to
totally
dig up the
tear it
rose
up and
garden and
change
put
it.
it back?
Don't know, but I think of the, let's say 8 things you just mentioned, I'd be shocked if more than 2 are still there.
So you think they're going to take the Biden auto pen thing down in the colonnade?
I think the gold's going to come off the White House. I think the childish names are going to come off the White House.
Definitely.
That's not, but right. I don't
The
mind
Trump
that,
Kennedy Center will go back to because Congress never approved. I mean, you're just going to have thing
But they
after
won't
thing.
get rid of the ballroom. They're going to love the
right. The ballroom staying.
I think that will stay. That's going to be an interesting one because there is a movement, which I think is wrong. I mean, just it is needed. But anyway, we're getting off track.
Yeah. Let's continue. Okay, 2:30. The president has an interview at 3:30. Him and Vice President J.D. Vance are participating in some signing time. Playbook noted that this is the first time they are publicly together since the war has begun. So if the press is in and let in, you can definitely expect a lot of questions about J.D. Vance's position on the war and how the president feels about that. Again, just a narrative that reporters are absolutely obsessed with. And we keep seeing.
Well, there seems to be Rachel, you tell me, but like at least the media has this perception that they're going to get in. So somebody's telegraphing that that's going to be an open press scenario.
Yeah, I don't actually know, but I would think that the White House wants to show sort of a unified front. So why not let people in and ask little questions and be shoulder to shoulder? TBD. 4:00, the president's going to be meeting.
Interesting.
Excuse me. 4:00, the president's going to be meeting with George Glass as the U.S. ambassador to Japan. That is noteworthy for a reason we will get to later in the show related to the Strait of Hormuz. So pin that right now. And guys, I should just say, if you're watching the show, clearly you like the show. Please subscribe. Click that subscribe button. Anecdotally speaking, we know that a lot of powerful people here in Washington are watching the show, but we'd love to grow our numbers nationwide. So send the link to your friend, your aunt who lives in, Oklahoma or Texas. Tell her the show is great and tell her to subscribe. We really appreciate that. Just another word from a sponsor here, a new sponsor, guys, Fast Growing Trees. And I have to say, I don't know about y'all, but I have never had a green thumb. And in fact, all of the plants in my house right now are fake. This is because I have tried to have live plants in my house. I forget to water them or I overwater them and they end up dying. But I am going to be turning over a new leaf here, at least outside, not inside. I just ordered hydrangeas from Fast Growing Trees. This is America's largest and most trusted online nursery. They have thousands of options of trees, plants, bushes, and over 2 million happy customers. But I have to say the best part about this, if you're like me and you do not have a green thumb and you're just terrible with plants in general, all you have to do is go to their website and type in your zip code and it will tell you which plants are best for the climate that you live in. That does me a huge service because I just do not know exactly what to buy. So again, my choice was between the American boxwood or the hydrangeas. I went with the hydrangeas because I love the look of them and I love to clip them and put them on my my table, kitchen table for just the smell and obviously the look. And right now, I should say, Fast Growing Trees, they have a big, all these deals for spring planting season. Some things are up to half off, and listeners of Huddle get 20% off their first purchase. So go to fastgrowingtrees.com, use our code Huddle, and you'll get 20% off your first purchase. Again, doesn't matter if you don't have that green thumb like me, they're going to help you. So definitely go check it out. Okay, guys.
By the way, I when lived in DC, I loved the garden. That's true. I do. I love it. I love designing. I love everything about it. I get that from my mother.
Oh
totally
my gosh.
do.
Dan, so I just need to call you is what I need to do.
Good thing you got hydrangeas. They grow, boxwoods are very slow growing. Like
are they?
Years to get
I
them
love
to grow.
hydrangeas. And you know what, Rachel, when you get yours, maybe it's time that we switch
Yeah,
back.
I was just going to say, all right, get them out of the closet.
There you go. Very good. Okay, guys, let's jump into Iran. So we are entering week 3 of this, incursion war, whatever it is you want to call it. And while there has been a lot of signs of success in terms of taking out senior leadership, destroying, targets when it comes to Iran's military capabilities, the Achilles heel of this entire expedition is clearly the Strait of Hormuz. This, again, I mentioned this just now on News Nation. Sean called it over a month ago when this started. Well, not over a month ago, 3 weeks ago when this started, that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be so important. And the president is now saying he needs help. He is demanding from our allies that they need to help secure passage, safe passage of oil. The White House says that there's going to be a new announcement this week, or Hormuz coalition. And the president says he's in touch with between 5 and 7 countries. He has name checked China, France, Japan, South Korea, and there's one more.
And Japan, by the way, said overnight that they're not committing.
Well, that's the segue there, Dan. UK was the other one, because a lot of them have suggested that they're not going to jump in. Japan is wary. They're going to be at the White House later this week, but they're wary. Britain says they're not sending ships, but they are apparently offering mine-sweeping drones. France has a problem. South Korea remains non-committal. There's a whole rundown this morning in Politico Playbook of all these allies who say they're not going to help. So let's start there, Sean, because this is why you're supposed to be nice to your friends. Keep your allies close, right? And the president, yes, he's had some success with this campaign, but it sounds like he didn't build like a big, international coalition before he had this attack. There was the whole thing with Greenland that angered a bunch of our allies. So what do you expect? Do you think allies are going to be watching what he is saying and jumping in? And if they don't jump in, we're in deep trouble.
No, first of all, we're not in deep trouble. These guys, respectfully, they're not. They're helping on the periphery. The capabilities of some of these other countries are not that significant. This is more of a sign than it is a capabilities issue.
So
you want the coalition together for the sake of the coalition, to say to the world, hey, you need to be with this. This is a symbolic thing, not a capabilities issue. It's not like the Brits or the Japanese respectfully bring anything significant to the fight. This is about the symbolism of having a team together, a coalition of the willing, to show Iran and the rest of the Middle East, don't screw with us, we're united. This is all more of a diplomatic issue than it is a military capability issue. That's number one. Number two, here's my other prediction, or sort of forethought, because it's not a prediction, it's a reality. The Strait of Hormuz is just the first choke point. When you look at that, channel-ish straight going out, there's other choke points. The biggest one is, or the shortest one, the slimmest one is just the Strait of Hormuz. It's the first one out of it, and it's the narrowest one. So it's 21-ish miles across, but you only have a mile of a shipping channel. So it's very narrow what you can actually operate in. And there's a quote that's attributed to General Kane, which is so true. The problem that people don't fully appreciate is they're like, well, the Navy, the U.S. Navy has a history of escorting ships. That's not the problem. The issue isn't getting other capabilities in there to do this. It takes one fast boat, a swarm of drones,
right,
by a Houthi proxy to go out and disrupt this. If you're MSC or Maersk or one of the big shippers, it's not a question of can you get escorted. You have to look at your team and say, do I want to put that captain and that crew and that cargo at risk? Do I want to risk that ship getting sunk? Do I want to risk that cargo getting blown up? Do I want to risk the lives? And getting told you're getting an escort or that you've got insurance isn't exactly all they need. They need to know that the lives of their employees is safe, that the cargo that they're shipping will get to its destination. Yeah. So this is greater than just being told, oh, cool, I've got an escort, good to go. And that's the greater issue. And I think that's part of why there's this desire to have a coalition of the willing.
Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to sort of, opening up the strait, making sure it's secure, I can't imagine the president wants the U.S. to be the one taking all the hits. If something's going to get blown up, they want other countries involved because we don't want to. Which
is the same reason they don't want to be involved, because they're like,
well, that's the absurdity of this, which is you're now literally you're demanding that NATO, who as you said, you just were threatening to go into Greenland. You just insulted NATO troops who died for you in Afghanistan. You belittled them. And now you're saying you must come in and help us for a problem that we wholly created, did not think through, and don't have a solution for. So the rest of the world, it's being reported on calls with Trump and his team said, okay, so what's the end game? What are we trying to accomplish? How long is this going to last? And he won't answer it. So they're like, we can't get any details from you, which the country can't get either. And you want us to commit something open-ended And by the way, there's no plan to go on shore. So nobody wants to put ground troops, except we've now rushed 2,500 Marines into the region. So the problem for Trump is, and I've always said this, he's all about strength, dominance, and ease, and not telegraphing his objectives. They're not telegraphing their objectives, right? They're not talking about nuclear much anymore. They're not talking about how they're going to have the straits open. So now the problem is the vagueness is now a weakness, whereas in the past, the vagueness was a strength.
Can I make one quick point on this?
Problem.
So Ukraine is not a NATO member, correct? Correct. So NATO wants the United States to come in and fund Russia's aggression into Ukraine, a non-NATO state, for a war that we didn't start, they didn't start, whatever, but they want us to bear the military burden for that exercise. And then we've said, well, we want you to come in to help us with this other non-NATO thing. And all of them go, yeah, forget it. Once again, though, I get it. Everyone wants to say, oh, you weren't a nice man and you didn't say these pretty words to us. But at the end of the day, when the going gets tough, we're always there for them and they're nowhere to be found for us. And I'm just saying.
That's just not true. I mean, they died in Afghanistan, Sean.
That was a NATO mission.
Ukraine is on their border.
That was a NATO mission.
Ukraine is on their border. Russia invaded Ukraine. We invaded Iran. So, Sean, I mean, it's a nice thought, but like, this is the problem for the right. It's like a house of cards right now.
Can I ask very quickly, which country is going to be the first to say they'll help?
Well, it's not a question of whether they'll help, but they're going to do this mealy mouth. We'll send MREs to you guys in a container ship. I mean, like they'll help, but it's not, I mean, and as I said, I mean, look, it's not like we need them per se. They're not, but I think we want to feel shared burden,
right? That
we're in there with them, that they, because an attack, it's one thing to attack us right now. It's another thing if when they're all involved, now they're bought into it. And this is where I think Iran made a massive tactical mistake, firing on the UAE, going into to Turkey and all these, like, where suddenly they forced a lot of these other GCC nations to join a fight that they probably would have stayed out of.
Well, can I just make the point? I mean, like, if we're the only ones, keeping the Strait secure or trying to reopen the Strait, it also like leads to this question about us being there longer, right? I mean, we were originally talking about a 4-week time frame here. The Axios lead this morning is Trump's escalation trap, and basically, the piece in the column talks about if we stay and we, are insistent on making sure the Strait remains safe, this could sort of bog the U.S. down in this war/incursion even longer. Is that a concern for you, Sean? Yeah.
Of course, because as I said, I mean, look, the problem is it's not just Iran. You've got the Houthis and Houthi proxies further down the mouth of that strait that you have to worry about going forward. This is not just about I mean, the president's right about taking out Iran, its capabilities, its leadership. But it's like, some kind of cancer that metastasizes itself and pops up all over here. It's not just Iran, like a state actor. All these non-state actors are in the fight as well. And you can't just, it's whack-a-mole. And that's the point about the Strait itself, the Strait of Hormuz, which is a quick little, we call them a rib, like the little 15-foot inflatables, goes out there with a bunch of guns and starts firing on a container ship. That matters. Like, those are the kind of things that, like, you can only have so many ships defending against that. And I'm just,
well, and it creates two problems, which is we are now talking about 2-3 things that might require troops on an ongoing basis. One is the island, I can't pronounce it, the Karg Island, right? So we're talking about troops potentially going in to take it. You then have to hold it. Right? You can't just go in, take them out, and leave, because they'll just come back with a different set of troops. The second thing that we're talking about, and Trump is non-committal, we still have the issue of the nuclear stuff sitting in mountains. So now we're talking about teams going in to extract it, okay? And then the third thing is the coastline, because the Strait needs to stay open. And this all goes to the regime is not we're supposedly not talking about regime change. So now here it is. We said, Sean, at first, the end of April was the key. Now we're talking about May. We said no way would boots go in the ground. Now we're talking about how many boots are being put into the region and how long they're going to stay. You just look at this and you keep saying to yourself, nobody knows. And they don't want to commit to anything. And meanwhile, the political clock is ticking.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Related, 2,500 Marines have been sent over to the region. And do we know if that's going to be for the...
They won't say. They
won't,
will
okay.
not say what the mission is of those Marines.
Well,
Which tells you
by the
everything.
way, I think to say it at this point, that's the part of what you want to do is keep Iran guessing.
For sure.
You don't want them to know, hey, here's where they're going, land, making a
But it's certainly like, okay, if they're on their way, like
You'll know
something's
soon
going to
enough.
escalate pretty quickly here.
Do you guys think those are the, Sean, do you think though that that's it in the number of Marines, or do you think more it's inevitable?
I mean, I think at some point you got to back them up. So
Yeah, I
I mean,
agree.
my guess is you're looking at probably a few more thousand.
We got to move on to our next topic. Just last question on this. Like, there's this anecdote in the New York Times, David Sanger column about how the president asked General Kane like a week ago, like, why can't we just secure the Strait? And he explained, how complicated this is, as you were saying, Sean, with like one boat can cause so much problem and wreak so much havoc.
Drones.
And because it's such a small area, like it's hard to repel a lot of this stuff. You don't have much time if you're trying to like ward off a ship or like some sort of bomb hitting your way or drone or whatever. Like do you think the president is starting to regret this decision going into Iran?
So one of the things that's like whenever you do like a war plan or an exercise to do it on paper and on computers and in simulations, it's one thing. To see it play out is quite another. And that's why, we talked about this when the president's giving courses of action, and the answer they kept getting back is we can't be certain because, how many swarms of drones do you take out? How many small boats come after you? Like those are all X factors that you just can't, you can simulate a ton of that, but you don't know. Do they capitulate real quick? Does the son have a change of heart when he sees the damage that can be done? Maybe. So this is where like I get really frustrated when I see these. They didn't consider anything. Of course they it was insulting to me to watch Chuck Schumer say over this weekend, he said the president's planners are as naive as a college student. Those planners, by the way, are military officers that plan every scenario out for every scenario. Like you wouldn't believe the war plan. There's a con op for every country, including Canada, Mexico. Like what happens if? That's what the military does. It was insulting what Chuck Schumer said. He owes the military an apology for that. That's number one. Number two, every plan, no matter if it's a business plan or a war plan, is as good as the variables that you can account for. And this is the fundamental problem, is that in any war scenario, any military incursion, and that goes true with even like getting Maduro, like they plan for certain stuff. What happens if this happens? You can only have so many contingencies. And that's why the answer they gave the president was, here's what we can probably tell you, but here are the X factors.
I think that.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the challenge is that when things don't go well, it's classic in Washington that the stories start to emerge. And so the problem is you had stories this weekend of regret, again, anonymous, saying senior aides around the president think they might have made a mistake. You're getting stories of divide. Susie and James Blair saying we need to wrap this up. The military and others saying, no, we got to keep going. You'll get stories of backside covering. I keep saying this. Somehow Vance's opinion seems to keep making these stories. Over the weekend, General Kane, to Sean's point, no, we did warn the White House that this was a possibility. And then you're getting stories of blame. And I thought one of the most interesting points in the New York Times story, the huge story that they put out last night about kind of the state of things within the White House, was the little blurb that it was Israel and Netanyahu that were saying that the regime would collapse and people would rise up if we went for the decapitation up front. And that, to me, is you're beginning to point the finger at it was somebody else's fault that we're in this. Again, this is what always happens. So when Trump comes out and says everything is like roses, essentially, we're winning, we're dominating, there's going to be over soon. and all these stories keep appearing, you have a huge credibility problem building.
Let's talk a little bit about China, Russia, and Iraq regarding what's going on with Iran. But Dan, very quickly, we have a third ad today.
Oh, thank you very much. I almost forgot. So if you are like me, I think probably everybody here, there are a few things more annoying than when you're sick or you're hurt and you need medicine and you have to go down to the pharmacy and you have to wait in line, and sometimes that line is long, and then you get up there and they say, oh, by the way, your medication's not ready or your kid's not ready, and you just sit there and you wait. So if you're like me, you say, you know what, there has to be a better solution. And that's why All Family Pharmacy allows you to order online. So the hassle of getting a prescription medication, the whole system is slow, frustrating, and outdated. So they do it a smarter way. You go online, you choose the medications that you need, and you fill out a short medical form. A licensed doctor reviews your request, and if appropriate, they provide the prescription. And it shows up right at your door. They have everything from antibiotics to virus medications, hundreds and hundreds of other prescriptions that families rely on. So go to allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle, allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle. Use the code HUDDLE10, HUDDLE10 to get 10% off your order today. But I can just tell you, there is nothing more frustrating than waiting in line for medication in a pharmacy.
Yeah, super convenient.
Oh,
thank you to our newest sponsor there. Let's talk about China, Russia, and Iraq when it comes to Iran. So the United States has issued a 30-day waiver, guys, for countries to buy sanctioned Russian oil. And that is despite some reporting suggesting that Russia's trying to help Iran. At the same time, you have the president getting frustrated with China, saying he might delay his trip to China, which is in 2 weeks. I believe it's supposed to be in 2 weeks, unless China helps out with the Strait of Hormuz in the situation in Iran. And then in Iraq, I mean, things are just totally spiraling out of control. I guess let's just start, though, with the Russia situation. Sean, there's a lot of Russia hawks, obviously, in the Republican Party. Are they okay with this sort of 30-day waiver because, you know, they want to stabilize oil prices like worldwide? Or is this going to cause a problem with some Republicans?
So I've heard Secretary Wright, Secretary of Energy, talk about this, and I think it makes sense. I think the problem is it's a very esoteric, complicated answer in terms of the oil's import. We want to stabilize the prices. We're sending it to India. Again, it makes sense, but to a lot of people, I think, you know, when you're explaining, you're losing. And so for a lot of people are like, wait, so Russia gets a waiver to sell the oil. I get why they're doing it. And when you hear the explanation, it makes sense. The other thing that I want to do some more research on, I've always heard that Russian oil is very dirty, and that the refining process is much different for what you pull out of that pipeline, and what they have. So it's a very different like oil than what we need. So I think I'll you know, get a little more on that today. But I get why they're doing it, because you can't have worldwide oil prices go crazy. So I think the 30-day waiver is an attempt to buy some time. I think people will, on my side, will be okay with that for now.
Dan, what about like Democrats? I mean, they've got to be pointing out that Russia, they've apparently been doing stuff to help Iran. Like that's.
Yeah, no, it's, and then you turn around and say, no, we had a plan for this. Everything's under control. I mean, you just sit there and just laugh. Of course you don't. I mean, literally, the Russians are making billions of dollars a day. You're lifting the sanctions that you just put on because Sean's right, oil prices are going high.
Right.
Now we have a summit in China that was supposed to be about a massive deal. We all agree China is the, you know, big question when we think about U.S. foreign policy. And now you're trying to beg the Chinese to do something without being the beggar, but you're about to go to have a summit that's now going to be primarily about Iran. And then you go to our old friend Iraq, go back to the Iraq war. Who was providing the IEDs and laying them? It was the Iranians. And it turns out the Iranians are still there. And now we have to evacuate basically everybody we have at the embassy because it's been hit twice now. We've told our diplomats we can't guarantee security even in parts of the green zone anymore. So, I mean, again, when you sit there and try to tell everyone we had everything planned out, they'd be better doing what Sean said, which is the fog of war, right? The best laid plans kind of are only that. Once the bullets start flying, there are going to be problems. We're working them out, which is happens in every, but instead they keep going on TV and saying, we had everything thought out. We have a plan for everything. We're winning. There's going to be over soon. And I think the American people sit there and think that doesn't jive with the second, part of the story that I keep reading and seeing on TV. And it's not fake news.
Sean, how big of a concern is what's going on in Iraq for the administration right now? And like, how do they respond to that? I mean, they can't just do nothing, right? Like, what's the reaction?
If I were still there, I would say do nothing right now.
Okay.
It's not rising to the level of political discourse in this country beyond people who are like reading you don't want to create an issue that doesn't exist within the sort of the mainstream American dialogue and narrative. And right now it's not there yet. And I'm not sure what you would say. So I would not make this an issue at this point.
Okay.
I think the challenge though, Rachel, is it's the reverse of what happened 20 years ago, which is when we think about Iran's future, right? As we thought about Iraq's future, we have this problem that the Iranians kept coming in across the border with their religious brethren and fomenting trouble. Now the worry is they're going to come back across the border from Iraq into Iran to foment trouble. Yeah. So when we talk about the long-term stability of Iran now, right, because we decapitated the leaders, there's a little bit of a vacuum, the regime's trying to hang on. Now we have to worry that we're going to have terrorists coming in from Iraq as Iran went into Iraq before. It's here we are again, 20 years later. Same set of problems.
We will continue to track that. Let's move on to some politics here in the United States, because it's primary day in Illinois tomorrow, and this is going to be a big test for the Democratic Party factions that are jockeying for power. Let's start first, Dan, with this race to replace Senator Dick Durbin. Apparently 10 Dems running, but the focus has been on Raja Krishnamurthy, who is getting a ton of money from a crypto PAC. Then you have, Jillian Stratton. She's the one who had that ad where it was like, beep Trump, beep Trump, beep Trump. Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but she has the backing of the governor of J.B. Pritzker, super progressive and has a lot of progressive support. And then you've got Robin Kelly, who has the support of some of his fellow Democrats here in Capitol Hill. Mike Quigley, I think, came out and supported him last night. Dan, where's this going? What are you watching on this?
Well, I think what's fascinating is just all the subtext, because there's also a House race to replace Jan Schakowsky, who's retiring. And I think on the Senate side, what's so fascinating is the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus, has been very angry that J.B. Pritzker has been so aggressive backing Stratton when Robin Kelly is also a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Both Stratton and Kelly are Black. And so they've been saying to JB, like, we don't like what you're doing. JB obviously is thinking of running for president. If he were to elect or help elect a Black woman, we talk about Kamala Harris, Black women in South Carolina. I'm sure JB is doing this purely because he thinks that Stratton is the right candidate, but there could be a benefit to JB Pritzker if this comes off. If you don't, and let's say Robin Kelly wins, you now could potentially have an enemy with the Congressional Black Caucus. And then you have this other member, as you say, other House member with the backing of the crypto industry. So Senate seats don't open in Illinois very often. And when they do, it's a free-for-all. All these people have been waiting. And then on the House side, you have this issue of AIPAC.
Right.
You have all these candidates running. You have one who is very pro Israel, proud of it, not backing down whatsoever. The state senator, Laura Fine. But we've talked about Kat, I can't pronounce her last name, Abajala, that basically first got in. She's 26. She's Arab American, has over 1 million followers on social media, went at Jan Schakowsky, got Jan in her 80s to retire. There are all these progressives, and AIPAC is trying to attack Kat and then promote the other progressives to split the progressive vote with the hope that in a 5 or 6 way race, their preferred candidate, the one who is pro-Israel, may win with 25, 30% of the vote. The problem is now in today's age, it's hard to attack somebody and not have everyone find out who's doing it.
Right.
So you have all of these people. All I will say is AIPAC better win, because the anger in the Democratic Party after New Jersey, now the anger in the Democratic Party at what they're trying to do, spending millions and millions of dollars in Illinois. There's a poll out that over 65% of Democrats now sympathize more with the cause of the Palestinians than the Israelis. They are losing support rapidly. We keep talking about Democrats winning the House, maybe the Senate. Israel could find themselves in a huge hole. And we don't even know how the war in Iran is going to play out with the Democratic Party. It's amazing.
Yeah, sorry, Dan, I interrupted. But I wonder, though, even if they win, like, it feels like they're still losing. I mean, you look at these numbers with the Democratic base. I mean, I was reading the CNN story about this House race, and there was one candidate, Daniel Bliss.
Daniel Bliss, the mayor of Evanston.
Grandson of Holocaust survivors who moved to Israel, grew up with dual citizenship, briefly studied in Israel in his undergraduate. He has a cousin who was called up on to the reserves after October 7th, but he is hardcore against AIPAC. So, I mean, like, it just feels like if you have a candidate that is so clearly, like, proudly Jewish, but is, like, 100% against what AIPAC is doing right now, it just feels like even if they win, they've lost. Let's talk about Texas, the runoff here, because we've known that the establishment Republicans here in Washington, they've been privately asking the president to endorse Cornyn for a really long time. But now there's this huge pressure campaign, Sean, on the other side by MAGA hardliners and influencers asking the president not to endorse Cornyn. Now, these people, a lot of them don't have sort of the personal access to Trump that some, more establishment Senate Republicans have. But they are tweeting a lot, things that Cornyn has said in the past that are critical of the president. And the hope here, apparently, is that the president sees what's going on social media and just doesn't weigh in, or maybe even endorses Paxton. Which group here ends up winning out, you think?
So a couple things. One, I think Cornyn's like the Cornyn's window right after the primary, like every day that went by was not good for him.
Right.
The SAVE Act is going to matter for one of the things the president saw. Let me back this up. One of the things the president saw with when he came out against Bill Cassidy in Louisiana and endorsed Julia Letlow was the idea. And I mean, we saw this a little with Tillis, who is retiring as well, is once you write these people off, they're like, well, then I don't need to worry about voting with you as much. So the president has to realize that, like, whatever I need this done for my agenda or nominees, like I need to make sure that I don't piss the incumbent or the person I don't endorse off. So the Cornyn thing is a little interesting because he does need his vote. And I think that Ken Paxton played this beautifully with the Save America Act. Right now, I did an analysis. I put it out over the weekend. There are 49 yeses in the Senate conference. So right now, Cassidy is unknown, and then there are 3 no's. So Cornyn came out yes after Paxton kind of put the ultimatum down, and you've got 3 no's: McConnell, Murkowski, and John Curtis of Utah. If you're Cornyn, if this whole thing fails, you've taken away a lot of the pressure that Trump felt to stay with you. And I feel like the Paxton people are doing a great job of being like, why are you with this guy? Why are you with this guy? Making sure that they understand that he wasn't with them. He said a lot of bad things. Paxton has been loyal to a fault from the jump. And they're reminding the president and his team of that every single day. So I actually think that at this point, the Paxton people are probably playing just for a draw. Don't do anything. Just stay out. Let me see how this goes. And trying to get some kind of polling out there that shows he can win.
Sean, if he stays out, who does it benefit?
Paxton.
Yep. Oh, Rachel, I think you're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, I think you hit your microphone. Yep. Just tap the top of it. There you go.
Thank you. Wow.
Look at that. I
totally agree. Cornyn needs his support. If the president does nothing, it's definitely going to help Paxton. Okay, let's move on to quickly a very under the radar story.
Real quick, I talked to a Texas member of Congress over the weekend who said to me, Ken Paxton has spent like $0. And he goes, and Cornyn's, spent tens of millions. And he was like, where Ken goes, there's the ground swell, the grassroots are 100% with Paxton.
Definitely, 100%. Okay, an under the radar story here. The New York Times reporting that to address the farm labor shortage, the Trump administration is now turning to migrant workers. They've sort of quietly backed off immigration raids and crackdowns, and instead are sort of making it cheaper for farmers to hire these immigrant farm workers on these temporary visas known as H-2As. Sean, a lot of Americans are not going to want to do these jobs, but at the same time, this is an issue the base really cares about. How are they going to react to this?
Well, first of all, the statement that you just made is something that a lot in the base take objection to.
Really?
It's not a question of whether the Americans will do the job. It's whether we'll pay a fair wage for it. So part of the whole issue with H-1Bs and other visas is if you depress the cost and then say, well, will American take that job? No. But are we willing to have the real conversation about what something's worth? And if you devalue the job, of course, you're going to go for the cheapest, right? So there's a larger conversation that a lot of people in the base want to have, which is, yes, of course, no American's going to take that job for that money. But when you pay the real wage that it's deserved, the prevailing wage for it, sure they would. That's the bigger issue that I think is happening in this whole immigration visa discussion. For a lot of people, where they feel like we're not having the right discussion, which is what's the value of that work. The second issue is, I think the bigger point, and I had one of our viewers email me over the weekend and say this: the ag community, the farming community, and it's not just limited, but ranchers and farmers writ large are feeling tremendous pain across the Midwest. And this is, again, it's not just, it's peanut farmers, it's the farming community, their ability to export, especially because of tariffs, because China didn't buy as much as they should have, when they should have, are feeling a lot of pain. And to me, this is one of those underreported political issues, because you talk about young men not being active, whatever, the ag community in Iowa and the rest of the Midwest is critical. And if Trump doesn't have those people who've been very, very supportive of him, that could be a problem, because they might not be that pissed at Trump, but are they going to go out and vote for that? What is it? Iowa 2 and 1 and 2.
And the Senate.
Yeah. And the Senate one, I think we're going to be fine. Ashley Hinson's done a really good job. As a member of Congress, she's got good name ID, but I do think some of these closer House races could be a problem if the base isn't motivated in the ag community writ large. And this is just another issue within that bigger sort of overarching problem that exists.
Just keep an eye on the motivation issue, because now what you're seeing is young voters on Iran, you're seeing Latinos on immigration, and farmers on tariffs and immigration. When I think about places like Georgia, Texas, Iowa, when Democrats talk about winning 4 seats and holding the Ossoff seat, you're starting to see conditions where Republicans are beginning to get nervous that it's not a 10% probability, maybe more like 35 or 40. And that momentum begets momentum.
Yeah. I'm moving through this quickly because we spent a lot of time on Iran at the top, but let's move to the FCC. The chair, Brendan Carr, has now threatened a new threat on the media, I should say. Definitely not the first. If broadcasters don't change their tone in terms of war coverage, they may lose their broadcast licenses. This is the latest threat from the FCC. And this obviously comes after we have heard the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, criticize CNN and other organizations for how they're covering the war. The number one complaint being that they're not talking enough about the success and focusing too much on the negative. Well, Sean, come on. This is kind of ridiculous. Not kind of ridiculous. This is ridiculous in my personal opinion. How is policing news coverage this is not a good idea. How is this a good idea?
No, look, I think I think calling it out and exposing it is important, right? Talking about how ridiculous some of the phraseology they use, how unbalanced it is. I mean, I think Meet the Press, for example, this weekend was just a travesty. It's disgusting what some of these shows have become, and the amount, the bias in which they cover stuff. That being said, we still do have a First Amendment. Right. They have a right to be stupid. They have a right to be biased. The one thing that I think is unique, and this is something that, again, there's a difference in the categories of media. Cable can do whatever the heck it wants. It's unregulated. When it comes to television and frankly radio, these are public airwaves. And I don't necessarily agree with that viewpoint of censoring people for stupid biased coverage. But I do think that there is a balance where you have three, actually, I mean, technically four with PBS, but stations that all lean one way, and they are public airways. So I do, like, I'm just not sure how if that's the right way to address it.
And a lot of those broadcast stations are losing viewers, like by a lot. Like people, it's naturally sort of people are vetting their own news and going to different places. So like that happens naturally, right?
Well, look, the bigger challenge is, tell me what are they saying stuff that's not true? Like, are they lying?
Well,
no. I mean, so like, that's the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
It's like, don't talk about anything negative, right? Only focus on the positive, which is what you do in like Baghdad Bob third world countries. I mean, it's just, that is where, when they do stuff like this, I know who they're appealing to. Yeah. I know the idea of working the referees bully ball, but it is spectacularly backfiring. I mean,
wait, hold
on a second. I turn on Fox and Friends, and they're reporting on the same problems. Right now, he doesn't go after them. It's just throwing chum in the water to the base in an amateurish way in a war.
So I'll say this: two things. One, as I said, just for to start with, I don't like the tactic, right? Yeah. I believe that you call it out, that you expose it. To Rachel's point, I want people to go, great, then don't watch NBC, don't watch ABC. I do think there is a legal uniqueness about, I mean, that there is a legal uniqueness.
Absolutely.
About the reason the FCC doesn't have jurisdiction over cable outlets is because it's about the public airways, ABC, CBS, NBC, and public airways on the radio as well. That's it, full stop. So there's a reason. Those are the laws. And again, you can be as upset you want about CNN or MSNBC. They are legally exempt. Okay. So caveat that. That being said, the writ large issue about media, again, when the Biden administration kicked out 400 independent media folks out of the briefing room, there was no outrage, right? No one in the White House Correspondent Association said crap, right? The selective outrage about how the media is dealt with, to me, is just another example of like how we talk about the First Amendment, but it only matters when it affects certain people, certain groups, certain, outlets.
Well, we will be screaming at the top of our lungs if the next Democratic administration kicks out independent journalists from the White House. One more point on this is it just made me think back to a few months ago. I went to this big party here in Washington. There's a bunch of, MAGA leaders, folks in the Trump administration. And it was a party for this new sort of British television network. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it was, and the whole evening was centered around this notion of like, Britain, like in different places in Europe, they're trying to censor coverage, saying you have to give 50% to this side and 50% to this side, and how ridiculous that is. And by the way, it was ridiculous. So like, I was just like flashing back to that and thinking, okay, I remember being in a room full of administration officials and Republicans who were like, the British, they're trying to censor, and anyway, it's
well, hold on, go back to J.D. Vance's speech in Munich when he lectured the Europeans about giving minority voices air and stop trying to ban them. And they turn around and kick out photographers whose pictures of Pete Hegseth in a briefing are not to their liking. And the FCC chair is threatening people, don't report negative news. You can't make it up.
I guess it's one thing to threaten. Let's see if he actually moves forward with it, because I think, there's generally consensus that this is not going to be a successful case. But,
tell me where they're lying. That's all I want to know. Just
all right,
tell
guys,
me where they're lying.
Let's take
also just one line, because I don't want to end. Is that like he basically said you have to have more balance. He didn't say you can't report negative news. That's not what Chairman Carr said, by the way.
I know, but again, it's that 50-50. It's like he didn't say 50-50, but that was the standard that people are getting all angry about
oh, it's amazing.
rules. Anyway, let's take some questions. Pardon me. Okay. The Muni guy. Hello, good morning. Pardon me.
What is the most likely off-ramp taken once TSA starts running below 50% of capacity? That appears to be the most probable near-term catalyst that impacts swing voters. I agree. I think Democrats The only thing that's saving us right now is the Senate obsession with the SAVE Act, because no one's focused on TSA right now.
Oh, I see. Here's what I think what is, I'll caveat that, Dan, and say what's saving you from further problems. Because I do think it was number 3 on probably almost number 2 to 4 is probably of an issue on every morning show this morning, the TSA issues. And so I'd say that you're right. You would be higher on the list of outrage. But I just like, to me, the machinations in which Democrats are tying themselves into. Alyssa Slotkin came out and said over the weekend, we should fund DHS in the wake of that mosque shooting in Michigan, to which no one pointed out the fact that she's voted, 6 times against DHS funding. Cory Booker said this week, we want everything funded but ICE. Well, first of all, ICE is funded, so that's a non-issue. 2, if this is the new standard that we should fund departments except for the parts that we don't like, I can't wait till the Democrats. Well, I can wait. But when the Democrats back in charge, remember the new standard that you should only fund the parts that the other party likes, because I think that's the most insane. And the notion that that no one in the media pushes back and says that's not how it works. You don't just get to vote for these offices that you like, the agencies that you want, the parts of the department that are acceptable.
Yeah.
So to answer Mooney Guy's thing, this is going to get worse real quick.
Yeah.
Because when you make 35 grand a year and you're being told, just keep going to work and I'm sure you'll get paid at some point. And
Dan,
by the way, the bigger issue isn't just the short-term thing. These guys are quitting. They're like, I'm not doing this anymore. I can't keep going to work and not knowing if we're going to have another shutdown every 18 months.
Just a quick follow-up for Dan, because Dan, I know you disagree. Like, you think that, like Democrats should potentially come off of this because of the homeland threat right now, but you also know your party and you know, like, the pressure they feel from the base and how they cater to them all the freaking time right now. Like, do you foresee them like reopening the government without
No, because look at what they're going to spend the whole week on now or 2, the SAVE Act.
SAVE Act.
So what they're going to say is, look, the Republicans are in the majority. Again, my personal opinion,
busy doing this.
We should reopen. I'm fully believe that they're making a strategic mistake for reasons Sean is alluding to. But what they're going to say is, if something happens and viewers turn on television, all they're going to hear is SAVE Act, SAVE Act, SAVE Act from the majority. So it's not like if Republicans were sitting there saying all day long, reopen the government, doing events at Reagan National Airport about the long lines, doing things in every home district, Texas, Atlanta, all these, North Carolina, all these swing states. We are here to reopen the airport, and it's because of them. Instead, they're talking about the 2020 election, conspiracy theories of things being stolen. It's all a base play. And Democrats sit there and say, okay, our base is crazy, their base is crazy. We're okay.
Dan, I'll give you a point. I'll give you a point of agreement on this. I think that the lack of strategy, like John Thune has known this was an issue for a while. Yeah. And it took like we should have been, frankly, the SAVE Act should have been done. It should have actually been dealt with. The idea that they had to have their arm twisted this bad. This is Republican lack. I agree with you. The lack of messaging on both immigration, the idea that there is a dude in Fairfax that killed a woman at a bus stop in cold blood, and we're not talking about it more, is insane. The guy got arrested 40 times, and we're not using that as an example of what's wrong with the current system and the fact that Abigail Spanberger wants him out on the street again to kill again. This is crazy. The Republican Party needs to get its act together on messaging.
We'll be talking a lot about the SAVE Act this week too, by the way. Let's take another question. Okay, good morning, Bumps. Question: with American support for Israel being attacked on both sides of the political spectrum, is it smart for Israel to broaden their geopolitical relations with countries such as India? Do they need new allies, essentially?
I mean, I think politics is a game of addition, not subtraction. They need more allies. They need more allies domestically. They need more allies internationally. And I don't, going into Hezbollah now and what they're itching for in Iran, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but our goals and Israel's goals are widening. And there are more and more stories happening about the disagreements we have with them. This may not end well.
Any thoughts, Sean? I'll take another question here. Do we have another question? Let's do one more. Oh, maybe we don't have another one. Oh, here we
No,
do.
we do.
Here we go. Hi, Robert. Question. Do you agree that the administration has been putting too much of a happy face on the effort with Iran, instead of embracing and willingly discussing the realities of the war up front? We just lost Sean.
Yeah,
Sounds like we're
Rachel,
all
be
having
afraid.
technical
Be
issues on
very
Monday.
afraid.
I mean, this is what Dan has been talking about for weeks now, which is like, they're saying everything's great, they're saying we're winning, and then people can see what's really happening on TV, and you lose credibility when you don't acknowledge, some of these problems, some of these difficulties. Sean Spicer, I see a note, has just entered the studio.
Yeah,
so-
we just there
Go ahead,
it is. He's
Jim.
back.
This is not a good sign, folks.
Yeah, that's it. I, Sean, you can read the question here while you come back on. But yeah, I mean, look, I know some people think sometimes when I make points, it's like just purely partisan, like just you're taking a shot. I've said this from the beginning. To me, I get it. It's Trump's brand. And in 99% of the time, it has worked masterfully to always be confident, always be talking about success and winning and everything. And I'm reading The Art of the Deal again for the book club, for those who want to sign up. It's on Wednesday. And it's just stunning how much this is on point for him his entire career. But this time with war, it's people's children and tax dollars and our national security. I just think they're making a strategic mistake. I do.
I think there's two separate messages here that they have to balance. Issue one is talking about the military prowess, precision, the strikes, right? The military's job is to do what it's told to do. Take out these targets, take out these assets. And it's done it brilliantly. The second is then the next phase, which is quasi-diplomatic. How do you get them to bend? And there's two simultaneous missions always occurring. And I think Trump is focused on the military one, which I get. It's about the might, but it's also remembering that there are two audiences. It's reminding the Iranian people that, hey, we can keep going. And that's why sometimes, I know one of the comments that got a lot of media attention was this idea of, I'll do it for fun or what have you. And I think that was a message clearly intended to go to the Iranian leadership. We got you. We can keep pummeling you. But he's got to balance that sometimes with the domestic audience, which is, hey, this is serious business for us. We're paying more at the pump. We see it every day. There are lives at stake. And there is this balance. But I understand that you've got to make sure that you are also sending that message to Iran, which is we're ready. We can take you out even further if you don't capitulate.
But Sean, you know what it's beginning to remind me of? And people are going to go crazy when I say this, right? And obviously for you and I, we read about it. But in Vietnam, the military would brief and say, we knocked out, this many Vietnamese, we got this many, this and that. But the problem was there was a guerrilla warfare happening on the ground that sure began to feel like we're not winning, right? We're just, they keep saying we're destroying military assets, but we're not kind of moving the ball forward. I think the problem here is, to your point, the military is taking out military assets and all of these things. But then you turn it on and you hear, well, there are, Trump said over the weekend, I think 100% of their military is knocked out, except for occasional drones, occasional speedboats. And you just think to yourself, what are you doing? Like, why would you make those statements when it's obvious when I turn on my television? So everything's perfect, but you're rushing Marines. Everything's perfect, but you need you're begging other countries to come in. Everything's great, but the Strait is closed and oil's going up. At some point, the public just says, that's it. I don't trust you anymore. And as we all know in the past, once a leader crosses that line, it's really hard to get it back. Really hard.
Well, guys, we are at time. We are over time. Sean, what do you have coming on your show today?
We want to talk about how this is all going down. Brent Buchanan from Signal has some exclusive new polling numbers out about Iran, the economy, everything. We'll break that down. Plus, Secretary of Labor, Lori Chavez DeRemer, will be on the show as well to talk about.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So big day.
Sean, you going to ask her some tough questions?
We're going to talk about the economy.
Can I give you some questions to ask her? That's awesome. Well, cool. Very good. That is all for today, guys. We will be back tomorrow at 8:30. And thanks for sticking with us through some technical issues. Hopefully we all have power tomorrow morning and you will see our smiling faces tomorrow.